This event, and Python more broadly, is an amazing source of company and community. The community is why many of us keep coming back. But our first keynote speaker, Heidi Waterhouse, oh yeah, this is a segue, wants us to ask ourselves how we can take advantage of that. What have we done? What can we do next? And who are we going to be this year? I've been looking forward to hearing this talk since I first saw the abstract, so please join me as we welcome Heidi to the virtual stage with MirrorWorld.
Hello, PyConAU friends. It's so good to see you this morning, and I hope that you have a great conference. To get started, I want to talk to you about how we are living in MirrorWorld. But before that, I want to tell you that this talk has some topics that may be disturbing for people, so take it easy and take care of yourself. I'm going to address subjects like brush fires, violence, COVID-19, and general 2020-ness, for lack of a better way to phrase it. We are through a mirror. The world that we have now is not the world that we expected. I expected to be in Adelaide with all of you giving this talk, except it would have been a different talk. It's a different thing on the other side of the mirror, the other side of the looking glass. We've fallen through this looking glass, and we need a map to teach us how to be in this place. Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass is slightly less well known than Alice in Wonderland, but it's more relevant to us, to what we are experiencing right now. We're in a strange place with strange rules that we didn't understand when we got here and are only beginning to think we understand now. We have to run as fast as we can just to stay in place. If we don't keep moving, the landscape leaves us behind, and we are lost and alone and confused. We have our own Jabberwock, COVID-19. 'Twas brillig in the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all mimsy were the borogroves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch, beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. We have to practice the impossible, to be pro-social by being as antisocial as we can, to love people by not touching them and being nowhere near them. Every morning, we get up and check if we should be wearing masks for viruses or wildfires or tear gas. If that's not impossible things before breakfast, I don't know what is. These mirror experiences, these strangenesses, are driven by things in the real world. Just as Alice experienced rose thorns that were actually the claws of the kitten on her lap, we are experiencing racism, inhumanity, and fear through the mirror, affecting us in ways that we never anticipated. The drivers are real, the sensation seems strange, but we figure eventually we're going to understand what's going on. You can't give nerds a talk about mirrors without saying something about the original Star Trek Mirror, Mirror episode. The simplistic reading of this episode is that everyone is nasty and brutish when they're not tamed by civilization. But the more interesting take for right now is that we are all responding to our environment, to our fear, to what is incentivized. The twist is not that Spock has a beard, but that Earth is an empire, not a federation. And that difference drives everything in the show. When we think of ourselves as an empire, we do terrible things to each other. When we think of ourselves as a federation, incorporating many different worlds and experiences, even if they seem alien to us, then we can be more humane and kind. Even though we are in this mirror world, we have fallen through the looking glass, we must be aware that we are dreaming and keep track of what matters to us. We must wake up eventually, and we will. That doesn't mean that what's happening right now is unreal or meaningless, but it does mean that the futility and the difficulty of our dreams is not the only thing that's true. Robert Frost wrote a poem for our times a long time ago. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. I feel like we are being told that these are our only options, to end in fire or to end in ice, to burn with those that are burning with the desire for things, or to shut ourselves off from the world and isolate ourselves and become caged in safety. The world is literally burning. We can see the smoke from space. We know that irreplaceable ecosystems are cinders. We can see that our cities have combusted, not spontaneously, but with the justifiable anger of people who have run out of polite ways to request that they be treated as humans. These pictures are the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis, burned by angry protesters, and Australia's bushfires this year, and California's wildfires right now. The world is literally burning, and sometimes that makes it really hard to care about software, or even about volunteering, or even about doing things for each other, because it makes us so scared. It feels like we are running to stay in place, that all of our energy is going to not losing ground, like we should get an award for rolling out of bed in the morning and facing whatever horrible thing the day is bringing us. It feels like we have nothing to pay toward advancement or for each other. We're running homeschools. We are all hating grocery shopping online. We are all lying awake at night worrying about the future. It feels like we have nothing left. Alice said to the Red Queen, who's hauling her along by the hand, "Well, in our country, you generally get somewhere else if you run very fast for a long time, as we've been doing." And the Red Queen says to her, "A slow sort of country. Now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that." I was fascinated when I found out that there's actually a socioeconomic theory called the Red Queen's race. Schneiberg's political capitalism is also known as the treadmill of production, and it's a model of conflict as well as cooperation between 3 abstracted groups: the state, capital, especially exclusive monopoly capital with larger fixed costs, and organized labor. The desire for economic expansion was found to be a common political ground for all 3 of these groups. Everybody wants the economy to be doing well. Everybody wants to get more. This allows them to surmount their separate interests and postpone conflict by agreeing on something. Therefore, there's this grounds for political alliance that says a rising tide lifts all boats. However, the acceleration of this treadmill, the desire for more and more, actually degrades both the ability of these groups to hold each other in check and the ecology, the climate that we live in. The acceleration was not merely an informal alliance. It is a necessary thing that all these parties contribute to. And the environmental damage caused by all of this capitalist expansion causes a decline in value for everyone. And value isn't just money. Value is how you're living and what you're living like. This is a really interesting book. I didn't read the whole thing. I promise I just skimmed it. But I thought it was really interesting that he talked about the Red Queen's race, that we have to keep running just to stay in place, to keep up with the Joneses, to maintain our status of living, to do all the things that we expect, and a little bit more. I've been talking to you for 10 minutes and I haven't said the word Python. What does all of this mean for Pythonistas? it means that we need to remember we're not separate. The way I remember to spell separate correctly, separate, is about partition. It's about taking things apart. It's about being isolated. And there's this resonance of the partition of India where I think about how uprooting and violent it was to have a country divided and have people trying to cross the border frantically to end up in the right place. A partition is a way to keep things apart. But we're not apart. We're not separated. It feels like it. I know it does. I am missing so many Aussie hugs that I have literally cried about it. But also, here I am, and here you are. We're here together in this numinous space of onlineness. We are no more separate than we choose to be in our meeting of the minds. I wonder sometimes if doing software does anything to change the world, to make it better. And I have this to say. Of all of the technology communities that I deal with, and it's a lot, I talk to a bunch, thousands and thousands of technical people every year. Python is the community that I think is the most solidly identified as a community, and as a community that's interested in doing good work for each other and for the next people after you. Your focus on making statistics accessible is so vital. So shout out to the PyData and the Jupyter folks. And shout out to the community that always feels like they're holding their hands open for the next generation to come along, to send the elevator back down for the people who are waiting at the bottom. I've been to Python conferences in Portland, Oregon, and the Dominican Republic, in Petaluma, California, and in Melbourne. And I've been to dozens of other conferences that have Python people at them. And Python people are consistently doing the tedious, repetitive, and vital work of inclusion. These pictures are just some that I've taken at different conferences that say Python is making a real effort as a community to reach out and make the world better. I'm friends with Thursday Bram. You may remember her. She's spoken at PyCon Australia before. She wrote and helped edit the Responsible Communication Style Guide, which is a lovely resource on how to talk respectfully about your fellow humans. And then now they have a supplement for Age and for Python. And one of the things that Thursday talks about in the Python supplement is that Python as a language has a lot of in-jokes, and they're very funny. But we also need to be careful and remember to be inclusive of people who have not actually watched Monty Python when we're naming all of our variables and all of our projects. I think this is not only something we need to remember, but I think it's great that it's something we're talking about as a community. It's something that would get dismissed out of hand in other communities because, well, if they don't like the joke, they don't need to be here. But Python as a community cares that people feel included and like they get to be here. I'm sure there are times in the world that we've needed open access to statistics more, but I can't think of them. It is really important to me that I be able to tell what the transmission numbers in my community are, and it's really useful for me to know that I'm getting them in a way that I can mix and match them so that I can understand exactly what's going on. Forward motion on making everything as accessible and usable as possible is not just convenience, it's politics. And Python is doing a great job at that. We care about making sure that things are open and accessible. And I think that's really meaningful. It matters. It matters to give people access to data and teach them how to read it. It matters that you never warn a new programmer off starting in Python because of the community, and I've heard that happen with other language communities. It matters that there's a foundation to help start new conferences. It matters that Python community organizers are so often not the most privileged people. It matters that Pythonistas can be found all over the world talking about important tech-adjacent problems like contempt culture or data center eco-activism or inclusive language. not just about Python, but about the world that Python is living in and being part of. I know that each of these things feels like an enormous amount of work with an uncertain payoff, but Arthur Ashe reminds us to start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. We need the mirror world. We can't dismiss it. We can't go without it. The mirror world is essential, even though everything feels hard and backward. If you've ever tried to do mirror writing, you remember how clumsy it felt to try and do it. I had surgery a few years ago that disrupted a bunch of my skin and nerve endings. Part of the therapy to remap the nerves was to look into a mirror and touch the relocated skin. It sounds kind of ridiculous and mystical, but there's actually a lot of neuroscience around it. This is also a treatment we use for people who are having pain after amputation or are trying to rehabilitate after a stroke. Our brains believe things that they can see in a path that is outside of logic or cognition. I had to see things in a mirror to convince my brain and my body that they could coordinate, that they could remap the nerves, that these things could be put in from one place to another, that we could plug them together again. It's kind of amazing. And it's not the only thing we need mirrors for. We have mirror neurons that exist to make us better at being social animals. If I yawn, you will feel an urge to yawn. Even reading the word yawn makes you kind of want to yawn. If you hear a laugh track, you'll be more inclined to laugh along. Mimicking the behavior of other animals around us makes us safer and more secure as the part of the group. It's both reassuring and very dangerous. What if what we're laughing at is not something funny? What if we are tacitly agreeing with something harmful? I always found this fascinating because there's, a genre of things that we laugh at that may not be funny. We used to call it like America's Funniest Home Videos or blooper reels, things where people fall off their skateboards or whatever and get hurt. And we tend to laugh at it, but we misparsed that as laughing because something was funny. We also sometimes laugh because we're uncomfortable, because we've projected ourselves into that situation and we don't know what we would do in that situation and we're sort of emotionally scared. And so we have flattened out this concept of laughing to assume that it's always about something funny. But no, uncomfortable laughing is an important part of understanding what laughter is and how it works. So I think it's really interesting to think about how we are mirroring each other, whether we're laughing at funny things or unfunny, painful things, whether we're yawning because other people are yawning or because we are in fact tired and stuck in a stuffy room. We tend to mimic the people around us, but how should we honor that impulse while being aware that it can lead to horrific behavior? We need to hold this mirror of standards and expectations up for ourselves and for our community and name things in the boldest and most uncompromising terms possible. My community, which I am part of, is detaining and separating immigrant families. My community, which I am part of, is reducing access for the poor. We may not agree with these activities, but we are part of that community, and it is a thing that is happening. We have to hold that mirror up to ourselves and our communities, and it's horrible. I'm an American, and it is horrible to know that my postal service is being dismantled, that I may not be able to send my kids to school in person this year, and that police officers can kill people without consequences. Norman Rockwell is a famous American painter, and he did these two paintings. And the one that I was thinking of was this image of the girl holding her prom dress up and imagining herself as a more adult, more feminine woman. She looks really skeptical about it. I don't know if this is what she actually wants to do. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, but it is a future vision of herself. The painting on the other side is one that I hadn't seen before I started doing research for this talk, and it portrays the killing of freedom riders in the South. These men had gone to help other people vote, and then they were attacked and shot and killed. And in this moment, that man is holding his friend in the same way the girl is holding the dress. This is a mirror. These are both mirrors. We are looking at ourselves. And if we can't see all of the ugly things about our society, if we cover the mirrors of our mind, then we can't fix them. We can't do anything about a problem that we don't see. The mirror is dark, and I want to look away. Looking at the world right now is so overwhelming, and I want to look away. I want to play trivial games. I want to do anything other than stare into this. And in truth, nobody can stare at it all the time, or we'll get lost in it. It's dark, and I want to look away. But if I stop doing the work of looking in the mirror, it's easy to miss the things that need to be changed and can change. I need to preserve myself. I look away sometimes. But I can't cover the mirrors and deny reality. I need to be aware of it. I need to know what's going on in the world. So, now that I've really depressed you at the start of this wonderful conference, which is going to be amazing, by the way, I'm really excited for all of the presentations. What is the takeaway? What is the call to action? This whole delicious conference is ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to the community and the talks and the ways that we can bounce off each other and see each other. We have to remember in this conference, in this year, that we cannot stand still, not technologically, not emotionally, not politically. The world will keep moving. Feeling like our lives are on pause because of Quasi is an illusion. Things keep happening even if we're not outside to see them. We have to practice regular self-analysis. We have to examine ourselves and not assume that we are okay because we're doing what was enough in the before times. We have to keep learning and iterating. Sometimes things were not the worst problem before, but we've solved the worst problem, and now it's time for these other problems. So first, before you do anything else, before you take action, look at yourself. Are you listening to the quiet voices? That means both that inner voice that tells you what matters to you, and the voices that are sort of suppressed and quieted by the way we consume media. Are you working to improve? Are you working to improve yourself? Are you working to improve conditions for others? I'm not asking for heroics. I'm asking you to do something every day to make things a little better, because that's how we're at least going to hold ground. Are you walking past something you can fix? That's a really hard question because we can only fix so many things. Each of us only has finite time. But our standard is what it is we're willing to walk past. And we need to really consider what we're walking past and if it's something that we can fix. Maybe it's not even something we can fix or solve permanently, but we can address. Maybe we need to buy a sandwich for the guy on the corner. Maybe we need to take a deep breath and write to the teacher about how our kid is having trouble. Maybe we need to eject a community member who's behaving badly and diminishing the experience for everybody. Whatever it is that we need to do, we need to find the courage to not walk past it. Next, look around yourself. Are you contributing to your communities? And contribution doesn't necessarily mean code, and it doesn't necessarily mean emotional labor, and it doesn't necessarily mean technical writing, although of course that's awesome. You knew I'd say that. Contribution sometimes just means going through and filing things, or sorting, or making it easier for the next person to do a little bit of work. Are you taking reasonable chances? And this is a balance in both directions. Are you taking chances that are reasonable based on the amount of risk they will cost you? And are you taking chances that are reasonable based on what they don't cost you, that are accessible? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you not overbetting? And when you're looking around you, are you making it about you? Because I've asked you to do the inside work of looking at yourself, but when you're doing the outside work, maybe we need to be careful not to make it about ourselves. Maybe we need to make it about what other people in the world need. Heal by observing and mirroring each other. Touch real things. This is both an injunction for more crafting and a meaningful thing that says we need to acknowledge that all of our work on computers can feel very intangible to us. Maybe we need to take some time to touch real things. We need to look out for each other because nobody's coming to save us but us. So in the moment, we need to help each other out, even if it's a little boost or a little nudge, the most that we can afford. And draw your circle wide. There's a spiritual that I was thinking of when I wrote this. How wide is your circle? The bigger the circle of people that you think of as your family, as your community, as humans, the more likely it is that you're going to come up with something just and equitable for everyone. I love this phrase, and I looked up as much as I could about it, and probably it's completely apocryphal and has nothing to do with anything. But it says, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. I'm not asking you to change everything about what you're doing. We still have to chop wood. We still have to carry water. We still have to make our kids attend school, no matter what it looks like. We still have to send emails that are both awkward and difficult. We still have to take care of our friends, look after our family, and care about the people who are in our circle. None of that changes. But I think it does matter that we think about how big we can be, how big Python can be, how big Australia can be, how big the world can be if we are all carrying water for each other. So if this talk was too long and you read your email during it because it's first thing in the morning and you needed to get to it, let me leave you with a quote from Kurt Vonnegut. Hello, babies. Welcome to Earth. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter. It's round and wet and crowded. At the outside, babies, you've got about 100 years here. There's only one rule that I know of, babies. God damn it, you've got to be kind. Go to it, Pythonistas. Have an amazing conference, and remember to be kind to each other.
Thanks so much for that, Heidi. How are you doing?
I'm okay. It's not an easy time, but I'm in a lucky place, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so one of the questions that we had from the audience is how can people get involved in helping outside the Python community?
That's a great question. So I'm in America, and of course, my resources are sort of American-centric. But in general, if you are in a low-risk group, see if you can volunteer for food shelves. If you can't afford the exposure of volunteering, see if you can afford some money, because there are people who are going hungry because they can't work, and that's just fundamental. We need to feed people. We have to feed people. So I would start with food shelves, and I would start with mutual support. In the US, we have something called neighborhood emergency response teams, and they help communities build resilience and prepare for emergencies, not just like the emergencies we're having now, but earthquake response and fire response and all sorts of things like that. And it's a way to meet your neighbors and connect with your community. And I would hope that there is something like that in everybody's community so that you can get a little basic training and get to know each other. So when we're thinking about what we can do to respond, a lot of it can, but doesn't necessarily mean stepping out from behind our computers. I mentioned Thursday Bram earlier. she's not going to the protest in Portland, but she's organizing bail assistance, and she's helping collate a whole bunch of links and resources. And that is using her organizational powers to leverage a lot of other volunteers. So I'm not saying you have to be out there and able to do 100% work. I'm saying look around at what you have and what you're good at and contribute a little bit of it.
Cool, thanks. So related to that, I've got one question which I can sort of relate to as well. As someone who gets overwhelmed easily, what's the best way to not completely shut down? Like, what's the best way to sort of keep looking into the mirror and pardon me, and maintain the level of self-preservation that you need to be able to do that?
I will not lie. I sometimes use chemical assistance for this. Talk to your doctor. That said, I think one of the things that's sort of our downfall as technologists is we've been trained to look at the big picture and the architecture and the infrastructure and all of the causes and to understand the whole problem before we code anything. And that's not actually useful for us to deal with an emergency. What's useful for us to deal in an emergency is to basically write unit tests of action. Can I sustain my household for a day? Do we have enough water? Do we have diapers and medication and stuff saved for a day? If I had to pick up a bag and go, would I be okay for a day? How about a week? Can my unit test extend to a week? And if you write these small things, it's not like I need to change how government works. It's like in the US, we have a thing called ResistBot, which helps us remember to text our representatives. Something like that, where you're like, okay, every day I'm going to write one postcard. I'm going to do one affirmative action, because none of us can solve it all, but all of us can solve a part of it. And if I think about the big picture, if I think about like a creeping fascism all over the world, I freak out a lot, and I just sort of like unplug and go hide under a weighted blanket and play Stardew Valley a lot, which is, you know, a valid coping technique, but also isn't making me feel better in the long run because I haven't changed anything. I mean, besides growing some really great like fruit trees. So I try and understand it less from like a continuous integration viewpoint and more from like a test-driven development viewpoint.
Thanks. So for those of you watching, if you have any more questions, please do pop them in the chat, because Benny was feeding me questions and would like more. But while we're waiting for the delay to happen and for some more questions to come through, to sort of something that I've been thinking about a lot myself, and that sort of riffs off both of those first two questions, is so I'm a white transgender woman in tech, and that sort of puts me at the sort of intersection of disadvantage and privilege. And so it's kind of a really weird place to try and navigate with all of this sort of stuff going on. Do you have any sort of thoughts on how to navigate that intersection and how to navigate the bad bits and still leverage the privileges that we still have for good?
Yeah. So I think that it's really useful first to understand that privilege and disprivilege are intersectional. Kimberly Crenshaw wrote the definitive text on what intersectionality means, but at its very highest level, it says that all of us have cultural advantages and disadvantages, and they interlock in ways that we may not understand if we are not part of that small Venn diagram. Like, for me to be a white woman in tech is a slight disadvantage, and for me to have a neurodiversity issue, I have ADHD, is a different advantage / disadvantage. And I need to understand that, you know, disability sometimes applies to me and privilege also applies to me. And how do I use the privilege that I have to pull other people up? I don't find it valuable to spend a lot of time sort of railing against the machine. The machine is very big and it wants to squish me. Instead, I was looking at this conference and the speakers. And I think my new metric for like internal professional success is there are 6 conference speakers here who I have been able to help, who I've worked through a talk with or given some career advice to or helped with a job lead. And if I use that as a metric, like we always accomplish what we measure, right? If you pay programmers based on lines of code, you get extremely verbose code. So if we are going to accomplish things, we need to think about what metrics that we're setting that make our accomplishments meaningful and worthwhile to us. So like maybe for this year, my metric is how many people can I get on stage? Because I feel like being able to speak and being on stage gives you a wide range of advantages, not just like sometimes I get to go to Australia, but also you're not going to freeze up when you're giving a presentation to 30 people at your company. And that's an advantage. That's a privilege that you feel comfortable putting together a slideshow and saying, hey, here's why we need to provision more this year. So I want to say that as people who have some privilege, we need to make sure that we are distributing it as widely as possible. And when I say I don't want to always rail against the machine, that's not to say that I don't want to use my privilege up, because that is also important. At my company right now, we're having some serious discussions about pay transparency. And we asked about pay transparency 6 months ago, and then they were like, COVID, can't think about anything, which is may or may not be what's going on. But since I'm in the original cadre of people who started work at this company, I'm not going to get fired for being an agitator that way. Or I have a much longer runway than somebody who's only been here 6 months or a year. So that's what I'm going to use my privilege to do, is ask questions that might be more dangerous for somebody who's newer. And asking questions is not nothing. Asking questions induces discomfort. Or at least if the questions that you're asking are meaningful, they cause a little discomfort. And you may have noticed that even in your relationships, like the really meaty, should we stay together kind of questions, like, do you want kids? Do you care about religion? Tabs or spaces? Like, we have to discuss these things. And it's uncomfortable for us, like, because we have these deeply held beliefs. So every time we're asking a question, we're forcing people to justify their worldview. And the reverse of that is every time we ask someone with less privilege a question, we are also asking them to justify their worldview. So every time someone says, no, where are you really from? Were you born a girl? Is that your natural hair color? We're saying, I don't believe your worldview, I'm challenging it. I think that's really an interesting way to think about who we want to induce discomfort in.
Yeah, so I've noticed that through sort of thinking through a lot of these things, I see some of the experiences that other disadvantaged groups have and go, hey, I can relate to that. And then go, but if I talk about how do I relate to that and how do I make sure that I'm not talking over people? Do you have any sort of advice on that sort of thing?
I think that with it's hard. It's really hard because we have this desire to, like, I learned a hack for this, let me help you. Is not always the solution that people want. So I think that one of the things we can do when we're thinking about how not to talk over people is to ask if people want input. So I have this thing, I'm like the mom friend, and I end up giving everybody relationship advice. And that means that they say something that I have a piece of advice for. My first job, the first thing I say is not, well, you should. It is, do you want advice or sympathy? And if you can separate those two, your advice giving gets so much more valuable because you only tell people who want it. Sometimes you're complaining because you just want some sympathy. The bus drove by you and splashed you, and also you dropped your parmy in the wastebasket accidentally. Like, it's a terrible day. I don't need any advice about like staying away from buses and not dropping things. Thanks. I need some sympathy. But if you're having a thing where you're like, I'm really frustrated with my manager and I don't know how to get around this roadblock that he's put up, take a deep breath and say, do you want advice or sympathy? And asking that every time positions you as a person who is like willing to give advice, but not insistent on it as your identity. Maybe what you just want is listening.
So, related to that, we've had a question from the chat about friends and family and community and how to sort of draw the lines and prioritize energies and define boundaries and balance that without burning out. Do you have any thoughts on how to best go about that?
I think that it's a very religious answer, so I'm sorry. I think that we are given so much to handle sometimes, but also if we look around, we are mostly given the resources to handle them. Maybe not gracefully, maybe not well, but if we can get over ourselves and ask for help, I think that helps a lot. So like yesterday, my wife was running an errand and I was having a terrible day. And I'm like, will you please pick me up like a tall, cold soft drink? And she went, I don't know, 5 miles out of her way to pick me up a cherry limeade. And that made me feel really loved. Like, was it work for her? Yes, but it was work that she could afford. And so when somebody in your core circle, somebody that you think of yourself as responsible for, asks you for help, and it's not something you can afford, it is your responsibility to say that, which is really, really hard. I love you. I don't want to say no to you. I dedicated my life to you. And if you don't stop talking to me the minute I start to drift off in bed, I will smother you with this pillow. same life, 7 hours apart. But I think that we all have a personal energy budget, and we all have things that fill our bucket and things that empty it. And we're willing to scrape a little deeper for people we love. But there comes a point when we have to say, my bucket is empty. I cannot help you. Please, let's find another way. And this is especially difficult for parents or people who have dependent relatives. There's not a time that you can say, stop crying for 20 minutes, baby. Like, the baby is not going to stop crying. There is a time you can say, if I walk in there when the baby is crying, I will not be a good parent. Maybe the baby has to cry for 20 minutes and I have to go sit in another room and cry myself. If that's what it takes to be the best parent you can be, I give you permission to do that. And I give you permission to cry about school. And I give you permission to sometimes skive off like Zoom calls for school, because it's so difficult. And what we have to do is remember that we have a long ways to go. We have months and months of this left, and we have to pace ourselves.
Yeah. So another question that's come up is someone wants to know how to navigate the sort of tension between excluding someone by sort of drawing attention to their differences, their transness or their race or their hair color, and between not acknowledging it all and sort of erasing their experiences. Do you have any advice on how to walk that line?
Oh, so this is a classic problem. And so my wife is also trans, and there was a time when I was doing this terrible problematic thing where I'm like, wow, you really look like a girl.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It was a learning experience for both of us. I think the thing is, it depends on what the community is here for. If the community is here for, we're going to work on this Jupyter notebook together, then maybe it's not relevant that you notice something different about them. But if the community is here for, this is a working support group because I have the focus of a squirrel on crack, then maybe you can say, hey, this is my therapist. If you're interested, I know they have openings. Or even like, oh yeah, my kid does that too. Like, the closer you are to somebody's difference, the easier it is to sympathize with it.
Yeah. So another question is about speaking up to protect other people, when to draw the line, or the exact question is, when is my own comfort and safety more important for me to protect than theirs? Where do you stop speaking up?
If it's at all possible, I would talk to the person you want to speak up for. So I'm a remote employee. We're talking about this whole like location-based pay band thing. I'm kind of upset about it because it could affect my salary. My teammate is not remote, and he said, would you like me to talk about that question? Because it's less personal to him, and he can stand up and say, hey, this pay band thing seems like a terrible idea, without it being like me being defensive. And so that gives the person that you're trying to speak up for the autonomy to say something about it. Like, there are people who would really like it if you did not stand up for them. They're just really tired of the backlash that they know they will get. This happens all the time online. Like, a prominent woman in tech will say something, a bunch of guys will be, and it's guys, I'm sorry, it is. A bunch of guys will be super negative about it. And then like defenders will jump into the fray and try and help out. It's not helpful, especially if the person hasn't asked for help. It just makes the dogfight keep rolling. It's like, instead of breaking up the fight, which I think is what people think they're going to do, you're just adding more dogs to the pile. And it's no good. So if at all possible, when you're going to stand up and defend somebody, check with them first, because we aren't living their experiences.
Thanks. So, sorry, I'm having some technical issues.
It's all good.
Benno, can I please have the questions that I have unanswered down the bottom of the screen, please? So I did want to ask sort of some more questions about technology and sort of our communities. Someone asked very early on, said that the claim about Python being one of the most community-oriented communities is a bold claim, and that they've noticed R and Haskell have some pretty interesting communities as well. What sort of is there anything that you've seen in other communities that you think Python can learn from?
I think that's a great question. And it is a bold claim, and I am willing to stand corrected. Like, I have not been able to immerse myself in all, say 30-ish modern languages. I think that one of the things that I'm really encouraged seeing from other community organizations, I really love the Write the Docs group. Like, we talked about the Pac-Man rule earlier. That's Eric Holscher, who's also Python-y, but is Write the Docsy too. And one of the things I thought was really interesting is they explicitly said, you don't have to be a technical writer to come to this technical writing conference. All you need to do is care about documentation somehow. And I feel like lowering the apparent bar is really important to allowing community members in. How do I feel coming to a Python conference as a person who doesn't program Python? Is that something that I feel like I'm going to get content that's useful and meaningful, even if I don't know your syntax?
Yeah, and so I guess off of that, and off of the sort of ideas that Eric was writing about when he wrote about the Pac-Man rule, and the rule that I introduced in the video that you just watched, the name of which I've forgotten, because we filmed that a week ago.
Snowflake, or Snowball.
Snowflake.
Snowball.
Yeah, Something snow related, that's it. I guess one of the things that I've noticed is that like a lot of us that have been in the PyConAU community for years and years, we have sort of this lovely experience of first joining the community and being sort of welcomed and included and sort of brought in. And now we're part of the core group, we're part of the clique. The community, the size of the event is so much bigger, and it's been going for, this is the 11th year of PyConAU, and it's my 9th personally, and when I first came, it was the 2nd. How do you go about, do you have anything sort of more to add to what Eric was saying about making sure that we don't turn into a clique as we sort of grow and evolve?
Have we ever considered chaos testing conference organizers?
I feel chaotically tested right now.
Right, but I feel like, what if 3 months out, somebody said, okay, you're off duty. It's going to be fine. You've trained up this apprentice. We're taking your computer away. We'll see you at the conference. You're terrified, right? And yet, this is how we build robust systems. Is not just taking servers offline, but taking people offline.
We had a pandemic that did that for us this year.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, with any organization, what will inevitably happen is people will start to burn out and other people will have to step up. And the question is whether the people who have to step up will walk into a place that has like some documentation and has had apprenticeships and has a continuity plan, or whether they're going to have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and so I also want to share that if you are new, Katie McLaughlin, who is my predecessor, has written up a nice little short culture documentation which does document a few of our in-jokes, including the names of the rooms that you'll see on this side of your screen. No, that side, because, yeah. What's a good sort of tip as we sort of move into the first break for meeting new people in this online conference? What would you recommend the first timers that we have watching now? How would you suggest they get the most out of this event?
All right, I'm so excited that you're here, because this is the great thing that we've discovered about putting all our conferences online is like twice as many people can come. We're not restricted by venue space. We're not restricted by finance nearly as much. All sorts of, I was at a conference earlier this year that had somebody logged in from Greenland. I have never, in all of my years of going to like 40 conferences a year, met somebody from Greenland, because it's really expensive to fly out. So I think one of the things to remember is that there are a lot of new people around, and you're not the only one who's feeling like weird and uncomfortable and like everybody knows everybody else. The other thing to remember is that people want you to succeed. Nobody is showing up in a community chat to like nag you. And if they are, we're going to find them and kick them out, because that's against the code of conduct. So what's actually happening is a whole bunch of sort of anxious computer people are trying to figure out how to talk to each other, and they want you to succeed. So I have these stock opening lines that I use when I meet people. Did I mention like 40 conferences a year? When I meet people. One of them is, would you like a sticker? Which works great in person, but not so much here. One of them is, what's been your favorite talk so far? What are you looking forward to? What's an interesting problem you solved this year? How are you doing? All of these questions, instead of like telling about ourselves, allow other people like a minute to think about what is going on with them. What talk was interesting and why did I think so? Okay, what talk did you think was interesting? Are you going to go to this other talk that seems like it's on that related topic? This is how it's relatively easy to get conversation going. And it's when you pay someone a compliment, this is like my golden rule. When you pay someone a compliment something that they have chosen, not something about what they are. So I have in fact chosen my hair color. I never mind when people talk to me about my hair color. I have not chosen the shape of my body, and therefore I would rather not have people comment on the shape of my body. It's that difference between something that is expressing yourself and something you just are. And so if you're looking for something to say to a stranger, it's almost always better to choose to compliment them on something that they have proactively chosen.
Cool. Thank you so much for all of that advice, and thank you so much for your talk. I really enjoyed the bits of it that I actually got a chance to watch while running around organizing this morning. I'm so looking forward to watching it uninterrupted once this is all over. So thank you again, Heidi. I believe Jack promised you a round of applause, but you're going to have to deal with it just being from me.
Thank you.
If everyone else wants to clap at home, please do. We can't hear you either way, I guess.
I can see the emojis, though.
Yes, cool. The emojis. I forgot about them. I can't see them. I can't see anything. So this is kind of weird. Just into a camera. So before we go to our first break, we're just on time. So about 10 minutes before the next block of talks start in all 4 of our breakout rooms. I do want to just give a quick plug to the on the program. If you click that Sunday tab, you'll have noticed that because of a lot of the running around to finalize things for it was a little bit last minute. It was a bit vague until recently, but we do have a fully fleshed out list. Well, not fully fleshed out, but we have a relatively fleshed out list of things that are happening tomorrow. My experience at PyCon has been that going to the sprints, I think in my 3rd PyCon, in the first one that was in Brisbane, is what changed it from just an event into a community for me. So I really want to emphasize that if you are new, that's what did it for me, and that's probably a really good idea to jump in and see. Sort of get a chance to get to know the people. We've got some more social things. We've got some more code-related things. We have lightning talks. There's some more details on the page if you're new and you haven't heard of the lightning talk concept. But if you are, you'll be delighted to know that Chris Neugebauer, our lightning talk czar, is organizing them himself since we didn't program it for today. We've got a code competition, which we'll announce more about tonight. We've got mentored sprints for diverse beginners, which again, there's more details on the page. Lots of other things happening. So please do have a look at that and think about what you're going to do tomorrow. Other than that, Heidi, thank you so much. I will see you all in the voice and video chats on that side of the screen, now that I remember which way I'm pointing. And enjoy the day.
Thank you all. It was great to speak to you.
Thank you.